Hey guys, this is Retro Gaming Ninja. I wanted to give you part 2 of the Sega Genesis teardown, cleanup, and reassembly. We've managed to get everything cleaned up, and now we're going to go through the reassembly part. Alright, well here's our bottom shell. Cleaned up very nicely. Have a little bit of moisture there. That's not good. Anyway, we cleaned up very nicely. And what we're going to do next is we're going to put our bottom heat sink in. It just sets in the base like that. And then next is our circuit motherboard. As last time we talked through, there's some, you have your Motorola 68,000 up here processor. You got your Z-Log down here at the bottom. This handles sound hardware and also backwards compatibility with the master system. And your Yamaha 2412, I believe it is. Maybe it's 2612, my bad. Sound synthesizer right here. Alright, so let's get this back in. We're going to put our board in basically the same way we took it out. We're going to take and put in the front. Like this. Make sure our control ports are lined up. Make sure everything is sitting in its slot. Like that. That's good. Now we're going to put in our 2 screws that go into our cartridge slot here. So let's do that now. This will actually hold the motherboard down to the base. Now these are the longer screws, they're not the short ones. Don't tighten these down too far. Make sure that you do tighten them, but don't tighten them overly tight. Alright. Next we're going to put our power supply back in. It should just sit right down in here. It has a hole here. What you gotta do is line it up right there with this right here. Run your cable around this nub here. Like that. That way your cable runs, your power cable goes down beside the board like that. Next we got to put in some of these other screws that were hidden. There's one here. One here. This is the hidden screw here. That was underneath the power jack, the audio jack. This one's very easy to miss when you try to disassemble. Disassemble the board. And then you can just stick your power jack back on there. Not power jack, audio jack back on there. Now the rest of them should line up with the screw holes, and this is our cleaned heatsink, very nice. Should line up with these holes here. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll put this top heatsink on, and you're kind of working in reverse. So the next thing you want to do is that tab we showed you guys in the first video. the one that's actually over here where my finger is right now. You're going to bend this tab back down, and if you can do it with your fingers, it's fine. If not, use a flat head. Bend that tab back down to where it catches, okay? See? Alright. Now, we just go around and we put our screws in. Handy dandy little magnet here that holds my screws on. Grab a few of those, and I'm going to go around and start screwing this down. There are many screws here. So, take your time. Make sure you get all your screws in. I will more than likely fast forward through this very interesting part of the video for you guys here in just a second. I just kind of want you to see how this starts out. I'll tell you guys something, when cleaning this heatsink, you're going to want to be really careful because these things were never really meant to be taken apart and cleaned. And these edges are just cut aluminum, and they will shred you if you're not careful. Don't know if you guys actually saw my DS teardown where I was removing parts from a bad DS, Nintendo DS, and the case was pretty much trash, so I was going to scavenge the parts out of that into another DS to actually get a working unit. And the shell was so brittle that I ended up basically pushing a flathead, a Phillips screwdriver straight through the shell, trying to get a screw out and into my finger. I don't know if you can see that nice little scar there. That's a nice little X-shaped scar in my finger. That thing took several weeks to actually heal up, and that's one of the reasons why I hadn't posted any videos, is because, you know, nobody wants to look at that, and it's hard to do stuff with a band-aid on your finger, and, you know, so I was not posting for a few weeks until we got it healed up. Alright, so those are most of the ones that go into shielding. The next one that you're going to deal with is that one on the top. That's that silver screw. And that's the one that originally is going to have a Loctite, some Loctite on it, basically glued down. So when you go to take it off, you're really going to have to put some muscle behind it and to break it free. And it just screws back in like so. More turns is almost there. There we go. Alright. Now that we've got that, we'll go over here, and there's going to be a screw here and a screw here on this side over here. I believe I put that in the wrong spot. See? Magnetic screwdriver. See how well that worked? I dropped that screw down in there, and it would have been a pain to get out. That screw goes right here, actually, guys. Alright. And there should be, I think there's one here. Thing to do is remember where you pull your screws out of. If you can't remember exactly where you take your screws out of, what you can do is you can actually draw a rough picture, like a square, of the heatsink and mark where the screws are going. You can tape them down in the same pattern on a square that you drew out on there on a piece of paper. You know, anything just to keep them in line with where they need to go. Now, next task is to reattach the LED to the top of the Sega. I want to show you guys the top of the Sega. There's a couple things we did there. Remember, we had that issue with the power button when we pressed on it or moved it. The it was broke off of these two connectors here. We simply put some cement on there to make sure it's nice and tight. We also have cleaned it up. I don't remember if you guys remember what it looked like when we first started. It had a bunch of grime in there. These fins were completely dirty, and we've got that cleaned. Got some of those grooves out of there. So all in all, it's looking good. One thing we want to do is you want to make sure before you start putting the top on, make sure your power switch is in the spot you know, and your audio slider is in this position you know, because you're going to need to line these up to match with those. So next we're going to take and put the LED back on. So let's turn over, and like I've shown you guys before, we have those tiny little LED legs here. And now that we got that, we need to put our white cable back on. So you have to line up those little legs with where they need to go and push them back in. And if they're straightened, which they should be from when you pull them off, it should go right back on pretty nicely, like so. Like that. Then you just take these little legs and you bend them over to hold that down. Like that. Alright. Now we're ready to put the top on. So now I know my power button's all the way over here, and my audio slider's down there, so I'm just going to turn it over. Carefully set that down on top. We should line up pretty easily on those. Give them just a little wiggle to make sure. Yep. Then make sure that you're sitting down all the way across and your sill looks good. And then you go through the process of actually putting the 6 screws back in the outside printing. So all in all, I didn't have to do much to this. I did take some alcohol to the motherboard just to clean off some of the dust. There was no capacitors that I could find that were leaking. I didn't see any bad solder joints. Everything seemed to be in order. Really the only thing we had to deal with was a lot of dirt, and we also had to deal with a broken power switch. So, in our next video, what we'll do, now that we have it all back together, as you can tell, it does look a whole lot better. Power switch works nicely. No longer mushy. Resets nice. Audio slider's nice and smooth. So, in our next video, what we'll do is I'm going to hook it up using the audio video out. I'm going to run it through an upscaler for us so I can hook it up to the HD TV, and we're going to test out some games. So that was the Teardown cleanup. As you can tell, I mean, there's some fingerprints on here. It did clean up rather nicely. I did get a lot of the dirt out of the cracks, and definitely out of these fins. And all in all, it looks really good. What I'm going to end up doing next is I'll take some plastic polish and I'll polish this up, and it'll look almost brand new, like it just came out of the box. And that'll get rid of some of this fingerprints that you're seeing over here on the side right now. Alright, so that takes care of our teardown, our cleanup, and our reassembly. Found no major faults with inside the Genesis. So our next video we'll hook it up, plug in a controller, make sure the control ports are working, and we'll play a game and see if this guy actually works. Alright guys, thanks for checking out the second part to this. The last part will be, of course, the test. Once again, thanks for watching the Retro Gaming Ninja, and I'll talk to you later.